go. Alright, Sebs. You want to come up here and help me start it up? Oh. Alright, up we go. Whee. You know the buttons to press, so you turn the key around. Turn the key around there. Turn it all the way around. Like that. And then go. And again. And again. Oh. Whoa. That's it, sorry. Yeah, you take your finger off that because it keeps the starter motor going. Yeah. Rev it, rev it. Yeah. Yeah. Alright, I better get going. Say goodbye to the camera. Bye. Alrighty. Oh. Alrighty.
Welcome to my first video blog or motovlog or whatever you want to call it. I hope to make a few of these in the future. This is the first one I've done. Today I'm riding up the Port Hills in Christchurch, New Zealand, which is in the South Island. A city made famous in 2010 and 11 for some pretty destructive earthquakes. Yeah, I can chat about that later. Anyway, I'm riding up the Port Hills Road at the moment, and just thought there might be some views here for some people from outside of New Zealand who may be thinking of coming over and doing a few rides over here. I'm hoping to do a few more sort of rides a bit further outside of Christchurch over the months to come during the summer. Summer here in New Zealand at the moment, so more videos will come. Also, I haven't rigged up a microphone in my helmet yet, so I'm recording this post-video footage, so it's all new for me. So this is a nice twisty road going over a few hills, which is roughly about 500 metres above sea level, so get up into the clouds a bit. I'm going to head up to the Sugarloaf, which is the sort of one of the peaks, which has a transmission station, which has got a good view, so hopefully see a bit. So, a bit about myself. I've been riding for about 10 years or so. Sort of spent 6 years riding a little Vespa PX 200cc jobby, which was a great little bike. Miss it heaps. Sold that and had about 3 years with no bike, and recently bought this old airhead, which is a BMW R80s with the S stuck on the end, which wasn't actually a real model, but the importer of the bikes back in the 80s and 90s wanted to make a bit of a special, so stuck the S fairing on and put an S after the R80, so it became the R80s, which looks very much like the R90s of the 70s. Probably a little bit less horsepower. I think it's around about 50, 55 at the crank, not too sure, but it goes pretty good. Yeah, so here following a trailer, it's pretty hard to overtake on this bike, on this road. But yeah. So you'll probably see some views soon, but I think I look up to the transmission station soon so you can see where we're heading. On the little Vespa I had for 6 or 7 odd years, I did around about 60 odd thousand Ks on that bike, so bought that brand new. Lived in Wellington, which was the capital, so it was a commuter bike, but cranked up the Ks and did quite a lot of touring around New Zealand, and joined a couple of scooter clubs in Wellington, which was Scootwell and Can Scoot in Christchurch, so we did some pretty epic rides. It was really fun. An underpowered bike is a lot of fun. Overtaking some cyclists. A lot of cyclists use this road, so it's a bit of a hazard with cars overtaking cyclists and motorcyclists overtaking cars, so I usually take it pretty easy. Having an underpowered Vespa for years, you really know how to kind of slipstream and corner and stuff like that when you're pushing the bike to its max. So coming up here on the right, you can see we're almost just sort of going over. There's some clouds in the valley here. It's quite pretty actually. Try to get a bit of footage of that. Yeah, I bought this bike, this BMW, at the beginning of the year, January 2014. It was a bike I'd seen the previous year in a dealership for sale and really wanted to get it, but I didn't have the funds at the time, and somebody else beat me to it, unfortunately. However, I did see it a month later on our Trade Me, which is an auction site in New Zealand, a bit like eBay, and for a bit less than what the dealer was selling it. So the chap who was selling it needed to sell it due to personal reasons, so I was quite lucky. In fact, I knew the bike more than he did because I knew it had heated grips, which he hadn't realised, so which makes a hell of a difference in sort of cold riding during winter. So I've made use of that, and the switches for that discreetly, and so it doesn't, show any wires hanging out anywhere. Here we go. We're turning to the left here up to a road which takes you along the ridge of these hills. The road used to go all the way through, but after the earthquake had closed quite a bit of it because a lot of rockfall was still happening, so I was eagerly trying to overtake this Marae in front, but he pulls over, so that's good. So I'm going to take you to the top of the Sugarloaf. So you might have seen the transmitter then, which was on the right. Can't get all the way to the top, but there's a nice little car park there with a view which will see Christchurch itself, and then the Canterbury Plains, and then further in the horizon there's the Southern Alps of New Zealand, which is a mountain range which goes pretty much spans the length of the island, which I'm guessing is around about 500 to 600 k's long distance, maybe longer. So yeah. And he's just pulling over. Good. That's the transmitter in front, so that's where we're heading. A bit of a view over the plains there. So we're just pulling a right here into the car park, get a bit of view. See a bit of the plains there. It's quite a vast area of flat land, but as soon as you get past that you get some nice twisties. It's one of the benefits of living in the South Island. So there's the transmitter. So this area here is called the Sugarloaf, so in the winter it's often dusted with a bit of snow and is quite visible from the city itself. This being my first motovlog, it might be a bit long. Plan to make them a bit shorter in the future once I get used to all the editing and stuff like that, and cut bits of video. That's a bit of a waste of time, but I've got some pretty nice footage on this, so I thought I kept it all. So it goes for about 44 minutes. So that's the Canterbury Plains we can see, and in the distance you can probably see some snowy mountains once you get past those plains a bit further. So we're just going to pull over here towards the car park. You can see it's a place to do donuts. Yeah. So that's looking north and now west and towards the south. So this sort of hill range or mountain range is part of the Banks Peninsula, which was probably a volcano thousands of years ago or millions of years ago. Not too sure on the whole kind of history of this area, but I'm guessing that's what it was, which most of New Zealanders has got a lot of extinct and active volcanoes, as you may be aware. So we're going to come back to the road which brings us down into the harbour on the other side of this little range here. So we're going to go back on ourselves here. It's, yeah, pretty much only about 50 horsepower this bike, which is pretty good for me because I'm not used to big bikes, and going from 12 odd horsepower to 50 horsepower for myself is enough at this stage. I plan to keep this bike for a while. It's good on a budget, cheap bike. Not so cheap to run though. I'm getting around about 6.5 litres of fuel for every 100 k's, which of this era it's quite good, but a modern bike is probably a little more fuel efficient as it's not fuel injected in carbs, so uses a bit more fuel. Okay for the long rides, but commuting in town it really certainly chews through the fuel. Also, being an older bike, there's no fuel gauge, so I've got used to the whole reserve tap thing, which I think I've mastered now, and roughly get about 16 litres of fuel when the reserve kicks in. Another place of donuts here. So we're going over the other side of the mountain range, or the hill range, or whatever you want to call it, and this is Diamond Harbour, Governor's Bay, correct me if I'm wrong. Quite nice. This is a nice little bit of twisty road. Quite fun. This is my first GoPro, so I purchased the GoPro for silver, and I've got the skeleton door on the back, so to pick up as much engine sound as possible, but I'm going to try and work out how to get the mic set up, which I think I need to get like another skeleton sort of waterproof housing, not that it makes it waterproof, so I can get the mic cable into the side and stick it into the helmet, which will make these videos a lot more easier than how I'm doing it today. So this is probably the tightest bend coming up. A few more little twisties. Taking it easy here because we've had quite a lot of showers last night, and New Zealand roads are pretty poor quality and often get potholes pretty quick, especially when there's been a lot of rain. So you never know where there's new potholes. But normally I take this quite fast, it's a bit of a road. There's a nice little bend coming up, which has got a different type of road surface, which is really creepy coming up here. And this is quite steep, get a good low speed. This wasn't on the Vespa, so really cane it down here. Downhill. I think the maximum speed on that was, well, the speedo said 120, but it was probably more like 100, 105. The speedo lied a bit. This bike I've got's only got a single disc brake on the front wheel, but it seems to stop well. I don't know what two will be like. I've ridden a more powerful bike. It seems to brake well. It has a drum brake on the back, but I was used to that with the Vespa, even though it wasn't as powerful. But worked okay. I guess if I went from a flash bike to an old bike, I'd really notice the difference, but I'm used to old technology on the motorcycle, so that's all good. Works well for me. Okay, coming into Governor's Bay now. We're going to turn left soon and head towards Lyttelton, which is the little port town for Christchurch. Made famous by the film Frighteners, Peter Jackson film with chap from Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox. I'm going to pull into a little village or little settlement soon, which has a really nice marae. The marae is sort of a meeting place with Indigenous people from New Zealand. I'll show you a bit when it gets up. But it's a marae that's recently been renovated and rebuilt, and it got a sort of modern flavours as well as the traditional artworks as well. This bend here, a couple of months ago, a petrol tanker fell right off the road into the garden apparently and slided over, so there's been some resurfacing of the road there, plus some damage, earthquake damage. A lot of the roads here in Canterbury are pretty bumpy around this area because this is sort of the main focal point of where the earthquakes were, so where we've been riding pretty much right on top of the fault line. So there's been quite a lot of damage, especially in the flat areas that are near water. There's something called liquefaction, which as the ground shaking happens, the water table rises and pushes up through the surface. And especially where there's roads or foundations of buildings can push up the road surface. It was quite fascinating. I actually got some video footage of some a couple of years ago. And sort of leaves the silt as the water comes up as well. These roads here aren't too bad, but there was some cracking. Cracking also happened on a lot of these roads as well, where the road pulled apart. You know, you'd have gaps that could be as from 1 centimetre to metres in width. So it was pretty scary getting around straight after the quakes. But a lot of repairs have done them, but still being done. I'll make a video of the city of itself soon. So show the progress of the city 4 years later. So it's kind of like an estuary harbour to the right, and further along you'll see where the container boats come to take stuff away and bring stuff into New Zealand. These little twisties. So I think this next bay is where this little settlement is, where the Marae is. I'll just take you down a little road there and have a look. If you've never been to New Zealand, I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the most beautiful motorcycling countries in the world. Difficult to get to, but once you're here, the whole country's worth touring around and seeing. Changing landscape. The north it's subtropical. Carry forests and so forth, and then in the middle of the North Island there's an area called the Desert Road with sort of a plateau of a high land and some mountains. Here we go, we're going down into this little settlement here. And then the South Island is just amazing. I've spent most of my life in the North Island and recently moved down to the South Island 8 years ago, and I spent a lot of time touring the South Island. Still lots to see, it's just getting time off work, but really lucky where I live. I've got these roads here which are only about 20 minutes away or an hour's away from where I live, so it's not too far to go. So here, coming up, I believe on the right, not just yet, will be the Marae, and I slow right down, just coming up here. So there's often lots of wood carvings and traditional patterns and so forth decorating the front of the building. So it looks like there's something being on here. So this is it coming up. This is probably one of the prettiest maraes I've seen actually. Here it is. There's some beds and stuff inside because often they do like a sleepover and have meetings through the night and so forth. I've luckily had the opportunity to do that about 2 or 3 times since I've lived here. So there's a little church here which is part of this. This is a well-established settlement. It's got quite a lot of history that I don't know much about, but and there's also a nice little beach here as well. So we're going to head back onto the main road and head to Lyttelton. So you can see the hill range where we've come from the top up there, sort of, it's quite a ridge actually. But the road up there which went along the ridge, which I was talking about before, has been closed. But it was quite fun. No car's coming good. So we're heading into our summer now, so it's quite green at the moment because there's been quite a lot of rain, but often it does dry out here. Back onto the little main road again. So yeah, if you've got the money, come to New Zealand and do some touring here. I highly recommend it. It's just amazing. The whole country has some of the most spectacular roads, and I haven't seen all of them yet. And I've probably ridden about 40% of the main roads around New Zealand, but there's so much more to see. I personally haven't done any touring in other countries, but I've seen a lot of Motovlogs and watched lots of documentaries, and I reckon this country is pretty good when it comes to riding. I read somewhere per capita we're the highest ownership of per capita of motorcycles here. And especially with the whole cafe races scene and so forth, there's a lot more young people getting bikes now. As where in the past there's been a big gap in the market. We back in the 80s, pre-80s, a lot of young people had motorbikes here, and then we started importing cheap second-hand Japanese cars because some of the legislation they have over there, they had to get rid of old cars that were over a certain age, and we started to import those old cars here. In fact, further along we're going to see a ship which I believe is one of the ships that imports a lot of the cars into the country. So there's a lot of old 80s, 80s, 90s, 2000s Japanese cars here, which were previously brand new, owned in Japan. So cars are cheap here. So not as many motorcyclists, because that was a cheap form of transport previously, but the numbers are building now, especially with all the kind of scene, the cafe racer scene and stuff like that, and custom scene as well. A lot of Harley owners here, I've noticed. Big biker scene here, different gangs and so forth. And then you've got the scooter scene here in Christchurch, and there's a new scene, especially around your pre-80s moped, Honda mopeds and Cup 50s, where they're custom. And we've got a scene called the Quake City Rumblers, which have got quite a scene here, quite a following on the internet as well. Worth having a look for their videos and stuff, where they get old Cup 50s and cut them down and lengthen them and give them pretty cool paint jobs. That's a real big scene here in Christchurch, actually. So we're coming into Lyttelton here. Might get a glimpse of a ship which imports the cars into the country. So Lyttelton is the city's sort of port. And on the other side over there is Diamond Harbour, which is a little settlement which takes about 40 minutes to drive to from here. There's a little ferry that goes from Lyttelton, and then people catch a bus into the city to keep the commute time down. It's a nice little community here, a bit shaded because it's quite hilly, so you get limited sunshine in different parts of the day, but it's a great place to come for a coffee. A lot of damage here in the quakes too. I'm not going to ride through the town itself, but a lot of the main street shops have been demolished, but slowly rebuilding. There's the ship down there, so that's also an oil storage supply or petroleum storage for the city as well. And yeah, there's the boat over there in the distance. Traffic lights. So as I said before, this is my very first Motovlog, or whatever you call it. I do hope to make more, so if you have enjoyed this, please subscribe. I've had some other videos over the years put on. I've recently put some videos on some motorcycle shows that I've attended as well, and sort of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, got a bit of a video of that as well, so feel free to look through the videos and subscribe if you wish, and comment. Really would appreciate that. It'd be awesome. So here we are, coming into Lyttelton itself. A lot of these houses here have been rebuilt, but in the style that they were originally. Kind of try and keep the character of this little town. And a lot of reinforcing these walls has been redone as well, because a lot of slippage happened as well from all the shaking of the earthquake. Can't remember the magnitude, but it was bloody strong. 7 point something or 8.1. But all quite close to the city itself, you know, a matter of Ks, as in 10 Ks, 5 Ks, right in the city. It's pretty freaky, actually. A lot of bikes fell over, so buying second-hand bikes is probably not advisable straight after the quake, but yeah, this bike that I picked up had no damage on the indicators because a lot of the bikes fell over depending on which direction you had your bike parked. It's quite funny. A lot of my mates, we all chatted about that. The Vespa I had at the time fell over in a cupboard, fell on top of it in the garage, but got that fixed up through a panel beating. It was all good. So this is Lyttelton Tunnel. I never knew this existed till I moved down here, and I was quite surprised. It's quite a long tunnel, I think, about 2.5 or 5 Ks long, I'll tell you. And it was built about 50 years ago. Recently had an open day where you can walk for the sun. I can walk for fun. The whole city was pretty much walking through it, so it's packed. But it cuts down the commute time because otherwise you'd have to go to the top. There is a railway tunnel as well, so a lot of containers come through here on trucks and stuff. So yep, thanks for watching this, and I plan to make more in the future. And anyway, till next time, thanks very much. Cheers.